Yeah, so once that's done, I would love to get rolling with using all contractors and getting out of the renovation side so that we can have a few projects going on at once. Because right now, if we're doing the reno, we can only do one at once. Um, so that will be this summer. That'll be about the same time that I can get the HELOC on my house. So I hope I have plans to maybe do a couple flips, get some more cash, and then by the end of the year, I would love to have done 10 to 12 deals, which is definitely going to be a stretch, but I think it's a good goal to have.
Welcome to the InvestNest Real Estate Investing Show, a community for real estate investors to learn, network, and grow. Be sure to join the investnest.com and start learning and earning today.
Hello, everyone, and welcome to the InvestNest Real Estate Investing Show. As always, I'm your host, Travis Murphy, and we've got another great Invest guest joining us in just a minute. Grace Gudenkauf is going to join us and talk to us about her real estate investing journey and also her personal finance story, which is a great aspect to this interview that I think you guys are really going to enjoy. Grace is a buy and hold BRRRR investor out of Cedar Rapids, Iowa, and she's going to join us in just a minute. But before we begin, I would like to remind everybody out there listening to the podcast to please hit that subscribe button. And if you're enjoying the show so far, go leave us a review and rating wherever you listen. It really does help us out. The InvestNest is an online community for real estate investors to learn from each other, network, help each other, and grow together. We've got several places that you can do this. Our website, theinvestnest.com, is a place where you can go create a free profile and fill out some information about yourself and then go start to network with the other members on the website. We release this podcast every week, every Wednesday morning at 6 a.m., and we have a weekly guest that joins us and talks to us about their real estate investing journey and the approach that they take and the different strategies that they employ. So we release an episode every week, so be sure again to hit the subscribe button so you don't miss any of our upcoming shows. And then you can also follow along with us on Instagram, Facebook, and Twitter, and we can be found at the InvestNest. We put out a lot of content there, so that's another place that you can join our community. And there's a Facebook group page you can find by searching Facebook groups / the InvestNest. So we're building this community up. We want you to come join us. I thank you all for being a part of it so far. Spread the word. Again, hit the subscribe button and be sure to leave us a review and rating to help our community grow. I also want to hear from you guys. So I want to hear from all the nesters out there that have been tuning in. If you have any comments or feedback or any real estate related question at all, feel free to reach out to me directly at info@theinvestnest.com, or you can DM me on any of our social media platforms. And again, we can be found on those at the InvestNest. But shoot me a comment or a review or a question, and I'm going to start reading one per week, any comments or questions that you might have. So get them over to me. If I find one I like, I'll read it on air and hopefully answer your question or respond to your comment. All right, and now it's time to get started with the interview. And now it's time to welcome our Invest guest of the week. We're going to welcome Grace Gudenkauf to the Nest. And she can be found at smartypants.investing on Instagram and TikTok, and Good Morning Investments LLC, coming soon to Facebook. Grace is a BRRRR investor out of Cedar Rapids, Iowa, and she's going to share her story with us today about real estate investing and personal finance. So, Grace, welcome to the InvestNest.
Thank you. I'm super excited to talk today.
Oh, well, we're super excited to have you, so that's perfect. Before we get started, how's everything going in Cedar Rapids? Everything good over there? It's been able to get out and enjoy spring at all yet?
Spring has come full force this past weekend. It's been beautiful out. I'm so excited.
Nice. It's good to get outside, get that vitamin D going, isn't it?
Mm-hmm. Especially after a long winter.
Yeah, and a long 2020.
Yeah, for real.
All right, on. Well, that's good stuff. I'm glad to hear. But I wanted to go ahead and get started and talk a little bit about you and what it is that you do with real estate investing. I know from what I can tell on your platforms, Instagram and TikTok, that you put a lot of emphasis on personal finance. And it seems to be more recently that you've gotten into real estate investing. So to begin, can you just tell us a little bit about yourself and what it is that you are doing with real estate investing and investing in general?
Yes. So I am 23 years old and I started my full-time job about 6 months ago after graduating college. And I've gotten into the Burr method and doing a little bit there with real estate. And like you said, I love talking about personal finances because I think that in real estate investing, it's often overlooked that your journey doesn't necessarily start with the first door, but more with how you solidified your personal finances to be able to invest in real estate. And I never want to paint a picture that shows it to be more glorious than it is. And so that's why I always try to hit on working on personal finances and always talking about it and making it a more common conversation.
Yeah, that's awesome because there's a whole nother component to real estate and investing and investing in general. The concept is we all want to do it because we want to better our personal financial situation. But
Mhm.
like what you just said, it kind of starts with our personal financial situation. Now, you don't necessarily have to be super wealthy or have a ton of money or even have the best credit in the world.
Right.
But if you start working on those things first, not necessarily having all the money in the world, but start working on your credit, saving some money, clearing up debt, things like that, all that's really going to do is help you be more successful in your journey of real estate investing. And,
Exactly.
and
It's all
yeah, 100%. I think it kind of opens our eyes when you start looking at yourself as like a business or our
Mhm.
finances, like income and expenses and balance sheet and assets. I think not only does it motivate us because you kind of start to see, wow, if I change these few things, it's really going to clean things up. But it starts to get us in that mindset of viewing just finances differently overall. Um, so in your words, how would you say, like, what from a personal finance perspective to real estate investing, how do the two go together, and how can real estate investing be so important to personal finance and vice versa?
Yeah. Well, I always say if you can't manage your own money, how are you going to go manage an asset worth hundreds of thousands of dollars? That to me is just a really bad idea. You don't want to take bad money habits and project that onto a giant project that's worth more money than maybe you've ever dealt with. So I think that and same with every rental project comes down to the numbers. Real estate is the numbers. And so if you can't understand at a basic level the numbers of your own game, how can you go and try to dive into real estate and be successful there? So that is just, it's so important to me. And like, I just want people to always understand that how big of an asset real estate can be, and if you manage it correctly, how and you have just a little bit better of personal finance foundations, you could take the same deal. One person might not do so hot on it, another person might do great because they have those foundations.
Yeah, well said. That's great, and the fact that you're putting it out there on Instagram and TikTok and your new Facebook page to help others and help educate them and just kind of see how things like that work and what it's been able to do for yourself is great. I guess could we get into your backstory? So, like, how did you go from being a young person in college that may not have as much emphasis on personal finance, much less real estate investing, to where you are now
Yeah.
with your portfolio, which we'll get to in just a minute.
Yeah. So probably 3, 4 years ago, my older sister asked me to start tracking my spending. She's huge into personal finances. She's a money coach. And I didn't want to for an entire year. Every quarter, she would email me, start this quarter. And I would ignore the email. I was like, I'm not doing that. I'm in college. I'm fine. Like, I make decent money. I don't really spend that much, blah, blah, blah. Finally, I decided I'm going to pay off my student debt. I had like $7,000 of student debt going into my senior year. And I was like, I make too much money as an intern to have this. debt. Like I need to get rid of it and then figure out how I can graduate debt free. So she helped me with that. I got basically all my crap together, and it wasn't that hard. It was just fixing habits here and there. Like I made the same money. I had the same tuition all 4 years. It was just the habits that I changed that allowed me to pay off that debt. And then I set up a payment plan to cash flow my senior year. So I graduated debt free, and I worked for the same company all throughout college, and I knew I was starting in the fall. So all summer of 2020, I pretty much just ideated over what am I going to do with my first paycheck? Like, how am I going to really make this first paycheck work for me? And I don't want to start it off by buying a car or going on a vacation. Like I want to maximize this money. So all summer I was thinking about that. And my parents have had a few rental properties here and there. So that's always been in the back of my head. And then at the time, my boyfriend was flipping a house by himself. So that really started to turn my gears, and I just started reading and always talking to him about it, asking 1,000,002 questions. And I decided that I was going to go out with a bang. And with that first paycheck, I started saving right away to invest in real estate. And I started with a house hack.
Nice. And then it just went from there, huh?
And it just went from there because I had those foundations to live below my means, to track my money, to understand how investing my money could exponentially increase my net worth rather than spending it on liabilities and such.
Okay, so the most important follow-up question I think I have with that is, why didn't you ask 1,000,003 questions? Why did you only ask 1,000,002? No, I'm just kidding. So no, that was a lot of good stuff that comes out of there. I think what you just said about being a young person and your sister kind of trying to get you in gear and motivate you to track or pay attention to your personal finances, and you realized it was habits. I think a lot of the time it's just as simple as paying attention to it. People just do not pay attention. Everybody's guilty of it. I am. It's easy to just not track it. If you simply just start to think about it and try to track what you're spending, or just look at it, basically, a lot of people don't look at it. It's really not that hard to kind of determine where a lot of the waste is coming from and some things that you could easily switch around. And just by doing that allows us to really start to better our personal financial situation. You also mentioned you were able to do that and then cash flow, which allowed you to start paying down the debt. Can you explain to us what you mean by that, by cash flowing?
Yeah. So in terms of my college tuition, a lot of people don't realize that colleges will put you on a payment plan and let you pay each month of your tuition instead of having it due up front. My sister helped me realize that. So I reached out, I put myself on a 9-month payment plan. And from my job, I was able to every month make that payment to keep myself from going into debt. And so then I graduated debt free. Whereas if I had tried to pay the lump sum at the beginning of the year, I wouldn't have been able to, and I would have had to have taken out a loan.
So you basically built yourself a budget.
Yep.
You broke down the payments instead of a lump sum out front, taking in high cost debt. You were able to spread that out and then take a look at the amount of money you're bringing in through your internship, and then, offset that, take a look at your expenses or your money that's going out every month, including your tuition, up against the money that's coming into your internship, build a budget and balance that in a way that the internship money actually there was some left over every month, right? And that's the cash flow.
Right. And I actually had to, realized when I did that, when I made the budget and I said, okay, I have these 9 months of payments, I was like, I need to work about 5 to 10 more hours to get this done and still have money to enjoy myself. And so that's what I did. But I knew 5 to 10 hours a week, it's not horrible as a student. I was only working probably 5 to 10 to begin with. So it was really nice to be able to sit down, have the concrete plan of this is how much I need to work, this is the payment I need to make, and this is the money I'm going to have left over.
Yeah, and that's like perfect, because by you looking at your situation, figuring out where some spending could be adjusted, building yourself a budget, not only is it automatically helping you probably reduce your spending, but you can start to identify not just maybe where the excess spending is, but also where maybe you're lacking a little bit. And you were able to see that by just picking up a few extra hours of work each week, it could drastically change your financial situation.
Yeah.
And just by looking at all this stuff, like if you just don't pay attention to it like you did the year prior, it's none of that would even be relevant. You would just have gone on throughout the year doing what you were doing and most likely ended up in debt, as opposed to making these minor adjustments and ending your semester or your whole, I guess when you're done with college altogether. Not only were you out of debt, but did you have any leftover capital to go start investing with?
Yeah, I actually, I was out of debt and I had basically a fully funded emergency fund. It wasn't completely fully funded, but that savings goal was there too, so that I really could, with my first paycheck, start investing right away. And that's because of the momentum that I had from that senior year of getting my finances together, because it's all about momentum. I didn't have to spend those first 6 months of paychecks figuring out what my budget is and what money do I spend and how do I make these debt payments, because I already got it done.
Yeah, and when you start to do that, it gets exciting a little bit, because you get motivated at what you not only have done, but what then you can now also do, and you kind of get a taste for it and then want some more.
Exactly.
And I mean, I really do, like, I love what you're putting out on Instagram and the fact that you're sharing all this. If our listeners out there are, excited or curious about the stuff that Grace is saying about personal finance and budgeting yourself and cash flowing, go follow her. I'm going to have all of her links down in the show notes below, and we'll make sure everybody knows how to get in touch with you. But, it's a critical, especially at a young age, to pay attention to these things. And the fact that you're putting it out there and sharing your journey, and you're doing it with some humor, which I love, because you're making it fun and entertaining. I think it's great. So, but now, if we can, I want to ask you about real estate investing.
Yeah.
So you started your first job, and since you already had your kind of financial situation in place, you had some excess money coming in at this point, and you wanted to put it in a place that you felt would work the best for you. What was it about real estate that drew you to it, and why did you land on it?
My parents, like I said, had always had a few rental properties, and my boyfriend was flipping a house. So I was learning a lot there, and I just felt like I was ready to put in extra time on nights and weekends to make my money go far. So, like, by that, I mean like doing our own renovations, and I was ready for that. And just super excited about what real estate could do for you. And yeah, so I first wanted to do a flip. It actually turned into a house hack. This is the house that I wanted to flip. As you can see, it doesn't need flipping. So I actually realized, oh, I can qualify for a loan. So I bought it with an owner-occupied loan and had my boyfriend and my sister move in. And now it's slowly turning into a burr because the basement was unfinished. And it's actually turning into a really great project, and it's been a lot of fun.
Nice. So you decided to, instead of buying a house which can, be somewhat of a liability, you are figuring out a way to turn it more into an investment. And you mentioned earlier about, like, when you had excess money, as opposed to going out and buying a car, or, you had income. These are all like depreciating assets. A home and a place to live is a necessity. It's a requirement, but as opposed to it just being a pure expense, or potential liability, you figured out a way to turn it into an investment. And I think that's great. And for people just starting out in real estate investing, your primary residence is a great first step. You mentioned qualifying for a personal loan as your primary. That does a lot of things. It helps you not have to put as much money down, as opposed to it being an investment property loan, and you get better interest rates. And they make it, it's fairly easy to get into a primary residence if you have good credit and good income. So by doing these things, you are able to get your foot in the door with real estate investing and find yourself a place to live.
Yeah, and I always say house hacking is such a great way to get started in real estate, especially by putting that 3 to 5% down with an owner-occupied loan. But I do always want to make the distinction that, like you were talking about, is a house can be a liability. And so if you're getting a house at 3% down because you simply don't have the money and it's just going to be you living there, I personally would not recommend that. You're paying PMI for no reason. And I think a lot of people think that home ownership is super glamorous. And I always try to make sure that like I'm real about like home ownership. For example, I bought my house a month in, my well broke. I'm on a well. I'm kind of out on the edge of town. And that was $2,000. Luckily, I had that saved in an emergency fund. It was fine. And this to me is, since I'm house hacking it, I have income from the other rooms. But if this was just your house and you put 3% down because you didn't have any other money and you're well broke, you would not be in a very good situation. So I always want to make the distinction of there are good and not so good times to use a low down loan.
Yeah, great stuff. I mean, there's so many different directions I could go. We could make this whole podcast just about your first house hack, which I do want to get on some of the other investments you have. But, it's 100% true. Home ownership, whether it's an investment property that you live in or you don't, or it's just you living in a house and it's not an investment at all, there are all these other costs. There's these ancillary costs that come into play with owning a home, regardless if it's your home or an investment property. And you mentioned earlier being comfortable with numbers and finance and understanding how this works. Well, a lot of the times it starts with that. So you need to analyze the investment property or the purchase you're considering to make, and all of the extenuating circumstances that may come into place. So aside from if it's an investment property, your management costs and who's paying utilities, there's typically, like we like to say, reserve accounts that we set aside for repair and maintenance and capital expenditures. And it's nice to have that account in place when you go into the investment, and as opposed to waiting for it to build up. And
Right.
it sounds like you did just that with having your emergency fund in place, because things like this happen. But if you do it right, if you educate yourself and you have that plan and you're in the right position to do it and take advantage of it or make it happen, I mean, it's a great thing when it's done right. But I think the message is you got to be cautious, because you can get yourself into trouble.
Mm-hmm.
And then, we didn't even really talk about, you said the basement you're finishing out. So that's kind of becoming a BRRRR, which is really a value add. So you're taking something that's worth one thing in its current state, and then you're improving it to get a higher value, or an ARV, we call it, in investing after repair value. And is the play to then, once it's done, see if it can appraise for higher and do some sort of a refinance to recoup some of your initial investment costs?
Yeah, so my 6 months is coming up here. My 6 months of seasoning is coming up here in a couple months. And I actually bought $22K under what it appraised for. So I already have that equity plus my down payment, which, like I said, wasn't much, plus all of the value add. So this summer, I'm really excited. I'll probably take a HELOC on it and use that to move on to my next deals that I want to do. I could refinance. I got a 2.5% interest rate, so I am a little bit hesitant to refinance out of that. But I'm really excited to wrap up some of the rehab around here and get it reappraised and be able to convert that equity into cash to keep moving forward with some other deals.
Yeah, that's awesome. And you just mentioned something that I want to ask you to explain a little bit further, if you could. The seasoning period. You're talking about 6 months. What do you mean by all that?
So a lot of banks will want you to have 6 months with a property. They call it a seasoning period before you can refinance or pull a HELOC out of it. So I bought in December, and my 6 months will be June. And that's when my bank will say, yes, we will refinance you or give you a HELOC.
Yeah, and this is important because, I think the community of investors, where everybody's enthusiastic and, super excited to BRRRR things and get out there and do a BRRRR. And the BRRRR is an awesome strategy, but there's some things that go along with it that we need to know. And seasoning period is critical. You mentioned 6 months with your bank. That's not all banks. Some of them are 12 months. Some of them are 24 months. But what it means is that they want the deed to season. They want you, the person who bought the property, to own it for a period of time before they'll allow you to refinance. Now, I think you can refinance, but they're going to base it on the purchase price, not a new appraisal. So if you try to refinance within that seasoning period, they will not look at whatever it appraises for. They're just going to look at your HUD or your ALTA or your closing, statement to see what the contract price was, and that's where they're going to pull their LTV from. So if you're going into an investment property and your plan is to burr it and you think you can turn it around in 3 months and then you're going to go refi it in 4 or 5 or maybe even 6, you got to make sure the lender you're using to go do that refi will allow you to do it based on the appraised value within a given period of time. Otherwise, you might have to sit on the loan until it's seasoned. And if you're using, depending on the type of loan you're using, that could eat into, or add to your costs.
Yeah.
So,
and that's something you can always just talk to your banker is what is your seasoning period? Because I have worked with another smaller bank who has pretty much said, no, give it a couple months. But like you said, some banks might say 12.
Mm-hmm. Yeah. And that's right. And I think that's just one of those components that kind of gets lost in the conversation about burr. When we talk about burr, we talk about all the good things with burr and all the ways we can utilize it. But there are some details that you need to pay attention to so you don't get tripped up on, or you could be surprised after the fact. So definitely ask about the seasoning period. And I would even take a step further and say, get a specific timeline, because they have one. I wouldn't settle for a couple of months. Make sure they give you, so you know exactly what your plan is and there's no room for error in there. It sounds like this purchase was great and you picked it up under appraised value. And I put a lot of emphasis on that because most real estate investment deals, the money is made or the opportunity is realized when you buy, right? So when you buy is when you've kind of scored or not, for the most part. The great thing about real estate investing, in particular buy and hold, even if you don't necessarily buy right, as we say, or buy great, over time, it's still going to most likely turn into a good long-term investment. But when there's opportunity with equity, pickup gains and things like that, even if it's a value add situation, it really depends on the purchase. Because if you can buy it right or buy it at the right price, that will allow you to improve it and realize it an appreciated value. It's really in that purchase. And it sounds like you scored, a good deal when you bought the property. And this is allowing you to not only realize that equity off the bat, but improve it and pick up even more. And the HELOC, that's such a great aspect to real estate investing. Even if, like you said, you don't refinance, that's pretty cheap money. Mm-hmm. And it's your equity, but you're able to put it to work for you in a liquid form. So this will allow you, I would imagine, to go out and continue investing in real estate, recycle it through the BRRRR strategy, recycle that capital at a low cost to you, which is awesome. So, is that your plan? What's next for you, or where are you at? Are you currently just in the house hack, or have you picked up any other properties to this point?
So we're about halfway through another BRRRR reno on a single family home, and then we have 2 duplexes that are completely stabilized. We bought them stabilized, but it will be a long-term BRRRR. So we're not going to do it right now, but as the units turn over, we'll finish those basements, eventually refi out of it, and then be able to use that equity to, again, finance another deal and cycle through that BRRRR strategy.
Yeah, Grace, you're killing it. You're doing everything right. We could make this like a 4-hour podcast if we went into all this stuff, but no, this is good. So I just kind of want to break that down. I think what you meant with the aside from the BRRRR rehab that you're talking about, those 2 duplex investments, those are, like you said, longer term buy and hold, but it's almost like, I guess you could explain it as like a slow played BRRRR. When you talk about multifamily, the term, I guess it's a forced appreciation play. So you bought the properties as is with tenants, and as those tenants move out, you're going to improve the unit and then raise the rent. And when you are talking about multifamily, more or less, a lot of the times the value of the property has more to do with the financial model behind it, the income and expenses, and in particular the net operating income. So if you can improve the finances of the asset, increase the rent, and hopefully decrease some of the expenses, you're basically in turn enforcing the increased value of the property. So not so much like over time of it, a natural appreciation. If you're able to do that and say over a couple of years, turn these tenants over and increase the rents and make that property producing a lot more income, then it's more valuable. Then you can go to the bank and refinance it, and I guess, do the third R in the BRRRR, I guess. So that's great. I mean, that's awesome. So you guys how many units are you up to now?
That's 6. And I do want to say that the turnkey aspect of it isn't our primary strategy, but it fell at such a great time that we were doing our own reno on one BRRRR. So we knew we couldn't take on another reno since we're doing the work ourselves. So that's where these turnkey duplexes came in at such a great time with us, is because we know that rehab will be in a few years. And since it's stabilized, that's another aspect of income that's going to start immediately. And again, with it being stabilized, that means that we can also, if we choose to, do the rehabs one at a time. So we still have, if we are doing the rehab on one unit, the other 3 are still there, keeping us afloat, making us money. So I'm really excited about those 4 units, even though they're not really fitting into the model that we want to go after.
That's so smart. No, that's great. I mean, and that's the thing. Like, you bought them; they're good investments as is on surface face value. You don't have to do anything, I think, is what you're saying, and they're cash flowing. The fact that over time you're going to do that forced appreciation and turn the tenants over, that's like cherry on top. So you can do it when you can. It doesn't have to be done all at once, so you don't have to put a lot of capital out. That's great. Okay, let me fire just a couple of questions away for you to just try to see how you're doing this. Did you how can I ask how you're well, first of all, let me ask you this. How long ago was it when you kind of first started your house hack and then your next purchase? Like, how long have you been doing the real estate investing?
I would say I really started learning about real estate this last fall. So like 6-7 months ago.
And you're already up to what you said, 5 units?
6
units. So how are you guys, or how are you funding this?
So my boyfriend had money from his flip, so we used that for the duplexes, or for the BRRRR. For my house, I just had that cash since it was owner occupied. And then for the duplexes, we partnered with my sister. And so the 3 of us just split that down payment with a conventional loan.
Yeah. And that's great. That's the cool thing about real estate investing, is that there's so many different ways to go about it. You can put your own capital down, you can partner,
Right.
You can implement these strategies, whether it's like a flip or a BRRRR, and that allows you to recycle that same capital. And you're doing a little bit of everything. I mean, that's great. So what about managing? Are you guys self-managing, or have you outsourced the management?
We are self-managing. I live about 15 minutes away from all of my units. So that's nice for now. Of course, we would love to outsource that eventually, but for right now, we're self-managing.
And how is that going so far? Do you mind that at all? Is that problematic, or is that something that you don't find to be an issue?
I think that I have tried so hard to always be listening to what other investors have had to say, because I don't really have that much experience with it. And so one of the things for me was like getting everybody on online payments, like all maintenance forms through online, and really trying to systemize the management through there. And that will be an ever evolving task. But I think that it's going okay. And yeah, I'm excited. I think that I think very much in terms of systems. So trying to get all those processes written out and tenants trained to pay online and all that stuff is going to be exciting.
Grace, if this was a test, you would be acing it. You're pretty much nailing everything. You must really have paid attention to all those podcasts you listen to, because you're doing everything right. I mean, I think anything that you try to do, if you can systematize it, or automate it, is going to help help it or help you with it. But the property management, I think, if you can, even if you're managing it yourself by outsourcing or having this automation or system in place, it still takes a big load of the work off of your back. So it helps you do it, make it easier, and then it doesn't weigh on you as much and maybe become an issue that you don't want to deal with.
No, you're good. I was going to say is I just don't have that much experience in real estate. So for me, it's always keeping my ears and eyes open to the people around me, to the people in the online community, trying to really learn as much as I can from everybody else's trials and errors.
I mean, absolutely. And you may be new to it and you may not have much experience, but you're doing it right, and you're doing it probably better than people much older than you. So where do you see yourself going from here? I mean, you've got a couple of you have is it the one project in place right now? The Burr Rehab. Once that's done, what's the next step?
Yeah, so once that's done, I would love to get rolling with using all contractors and getting out of the renovation side so that we can have a few projects going on at once. Because right now, if we're doing the reno, we can only do one at once. So that will be this summer. That'll be about the same time that I can get the HELOC on my house. So I have plans to maybe do a couple flips, get some more cash, and then by the end of the year, I would love to have done 10 to 12 deals, which is definitely going to be a stretch, but I think it's a good goal to have.
That's awesome. So yeah, so by by moving away from doing the improvements, just like having those systems in place for your management, it will allow you to scale. So as opposed to you having to focus on one at a time, you can grow at a faster rate. And so it sounds like you're kind of simultaneously doing flips and picking up buy and holds. The flips, I guess, to bring in the capital to fund your buy and hold projects, and in between there, I guess somewhere is burr what you can to recycle as much of that same capital.
I haven't had my hand in a flip yet. I would like to do that, just like you said, to build up a little bit of capital to maybe do some more small multifamilies. Like for example, the burr that we're doing ourselves, we had to, in order to have capital to buy other things. But once we can build up the capital from that burr, once we can refi out of that burr, and then I can get my HELOC, we would love to, move forward without using contractors, just because, like you said, we can scale more. And if we do the occasional flip, it would be just for capital. But my long-term goals is definitely buy and hold and burr.
Awesome. So, I mean, we're throwing a lot of terms out there: capital and recycling capital and burring. Basically, just real quickly for our audience out there that may not be as familiar, what do you mean by burring and getting the capital back and being able to buy? Can you just kind of give us a quick explanation there?
Yeah. So burr is a strategy. It stands for buy, rehab, rent, refinance, repeat. And the way that it works is that you buy a distressed property, fix it up, whether that's you or contractors, get it stabilized by renting it out. And then once your seasoning period is up, you can refinance at that fixed up value, which is called ARV. And because it is now fixed up, it's worth a ton more. So you can pull a lot of money out, but you still have the equity that you built in through fixing it up. And then once you do that, you can just use that on another property, do the same thing, and keep cycling so that really you have one chunk of cash that you can just keep using through multiple deals.
Yep. So basically, when you're done with the current project you're working on and renovating it, once you're able to execute that refinance, Grace is going to get all that money that she's got tied up into the deal, or as much of it as possible, back out. She'll still own the investment, and then she'll be able to take that money back and go do it again.
Right.
What good explanation. Very, very clear. Very good. I like it. Very cool. So when do you have time to do anything else with all that you're juggling with real estate? I mean, do you have any travel plans? What do you do for fun?
I play volleyball once a week, which I love. I love hanging out in my backyard now that it's nice out. I'm on an acre with this house, so I've been really trying to enjoy what that has to offer on the edge of town. And then travel plans, I know that it's still the pandemic, and so I don't know when this would happen, but I think first up on my bucket list would be to go back to Mexico City. I would love to do that. And also, now that I'm thinking about it, Montana. I love
Nice.
Montana, so I would love to
Yeah.
be there sometime soon.
Awesome. I think everybody's anxious to do a little traveling once we can. Mexico's a good time. Usually people are thinking, or at least I am thinking of like resort by the beach, but Mexico City I've heard great things about as well.
Yeah.
And Montana's beautiful. I have been to Montana. I mean, it's something else. And volleyball, I have a niece who is a awesome volleyball player. And she also actually came up with the term invest guest for me. So I used that. Yeah. So I got to give a shout out to Elena out there. If she's listening. She's an awesome volleyball player, but very cool. Very cool. Well, that's some good stuff. Grace, you've been a ton of, very informative. But now it's time for our segment, Advice from Our Invest Guest. 3 questions we ask our guests each week. And I'm going to start with question number 1. What's one thing that you can recommend to our listeners who may not have started investing in real estate yet that they can do right now to help get them on their way?
Yeah. And this is something that I did. I would make a list, write down on a piece of paper, everybody you know that has anything to do with real estate, whether that's your neighbor who's a realtor, your aunt that works at a property management company, a friend of a friend who owns a couple rentals. You'd be surprised of the people you know who have something to do with investing in real estate, and just try to find a time to talk to all of them and learn from them.
Great answer. Great answer. That's a unique one. We haven't gotten that one before, but that's great advice. Okay, question number 2. Looking back, what's one thing that you might do differently if you were to start back over again? So if maybe something that would have either helped you get to where you are a little quicker, or maybe a mistake that our listeners could avoid.
I think that I would have loved to use contractors on our first BRRRR, but if I were to go back and do the math, I'm not sure that I don't think we could have. So I don't know if that's a great answer, but also I think the second answer I would give is using a realtor to start with. The first few deals I did was without a realtor, and which was great. It saved me money by being able to offer a more competitive price. But moving forward, I realized I need to focus on what I'm good at and delegate what I can. So I'm excited to start working with a realtor here soon.
Good answer. Yeah. I mean, but a lot of this stuff you have to learn as you do it. So, that's why I asked the question, because maybe some of our listeners out there can, take that advice and help them, avoid some of those missteps. But really, I mean, everybody's different too. So like if you've got a background with contracting, it may be better for you to do it. And that's the great thing about real estate investing too, is that there's no one way to do it. There's like a ton of different ways to do it. So, okay, great answer. Question number 3, do you have a book recommendation for us that you could point to for our listeners to help, get them started, or just learn more about real estate investing, or anything at all, to be honest with you?
Yes, I think that in terms of personal finance, which I said is like the foundation before, Your Money or Your Life by Vicki Robin is a fantastic book to read. And then real estate specifically, I'm sure everyone says this, but the Bigger Pockets books are all really great, specifically Brandon Turner's property management book. I forget what it's called, but it's like how to manage your properties. And it seriously is step by step of like everything you need to know, everything you need in your leases, in your screening processes, everything. And that has been so helpful for me to be able to read through it and literally like highlight everything, write everything down.
Awesome. Great answers. Good stuff. You've been a wealth of information here today. You're a great resource, I think, to our listeners out there. I mean, I could keep talking to you all day, but we're probably going to have to wrap this up soon. But for our audience out there that wants to find out more about you, Grace, and connect with you, where's the best way they can do that?
I would say on my Instagram, which is smartypants.investing.
Okay. And I'll make sure we put those links down in the show notes below. And be sure, you guys, to go check out Grace. She's sharing. She's doing everything right, first of all. And again, there's no one right way, but she's doing everything right for her, and that's obvious. And she's sharing it in a way that's fun, and it's easy, I think, to learn from. So a lot of great stuff, Grace. Go check her out. And I really do want to thank you for coming on with us this week. This has been a lot of fun. And I wish you nothing but luck and success in 2021 and beyond.
Thank you.
And I also want to thank all of our listeners out there for tuning in again this week. I hope you guys enjoyed that interview with Grace. She really is doing a lot of good things, and she's doing them right. She's implementing a great script, really, for getting started in real estate investing. So be sure to go check her out on Instagram. Follow along. She's sharing her story, and it's a great resource. So go check her out. Of course, hit that subscribe button if you're enjoying the podcast, and leave us a review and rating. It definitely helps us out. Go check out theinvestnest.com and follow along on all of our social platforms, Instagram, Twitter, and Facebook at The Invest Nest. And as always, everybody, I appreciate you tuning in. This is Travis Murphy, your host of the Invest Nest Real Estate Investing Show, and we'll see you next week.
Thank you for joining us on the Invest Nest Real Estate Investing Show. Be sure to join theinvestnest.com and start learning and earning today.